This is video number 4, gaining an overview of the content of your interview transcripts and part of the demonstration video series showing how it's possible to work and develop an analysis using NVivo. So having become immersed in your data, the next step might be to gain an overview of its contents. And this can be done easily using auto-coding and also using basic searching. So this video demonstrates how to do this. And again, it may be that you're looking to do a particular analysis, such as narrative analysis. But in most cases, gaining an overview of the content of your data would be helpful. And probably a stage prior to doing a particular type of analysis, whether that's starting to engage with thematic analysis more precisely, or whether it's discourse or narrative analysis, etc. Okay, so back to our project. So I'm going to be working on this NVivo project based on the CareerScapes data. So a little change has been made. So if we check here how the transcripts have been structured. So we've got the interviewer or questioner, Q colon. So Q's used throughout all 6 to indicate the interviewer. However, rather than just saying answer, question and answer, this is A. Albie's number 1, so Albie's responses are all A colon, and there's a space. There needs to be a space there. So this is really important because we're going to be able to use the auto-coding facility to separate out the interviewee's talk from the interviewer's talk. And that's important if we want to understand what they're saying. It would be easy, say, to do an autocode, which is basically a type of content analysis that's going to go across the whole data set without separating the questioner and the answer in the document. But that can lead to problems, especially in conversational style interviews. It's not so much of a problem if you've got short questions and standard questions. You can pick it up later if it's the interviewer that's been saying the words. But certainly in a conversational type of interview such as this, it's easier to do that first. So number 2, B. So B is number 17. And Archie, C. Julie, D, etc. Okay, so that's going to be important because what I'm looking to do is just to go across the data set and explore it. And explore it quickly. So I've highlighted the transcripts, go to home and press auto code. So the first thing I'm going to do is auto code by speaker name. And I need to put in all the speakers I wish to code on. E as Marlo and F as Sally. I'm going to put in Q as well. And we can see they've all been found. So now we just click on next. Now we don't deal with classifications in the Getting Started course until much later on in Stepping Up NVivo. But all you need to do here is to give it a name. So I'm going to call it person. You could call that anything. It doesn't matter. It already exists because I've done that earlier. So let's say person, and then click finish. So if I go into my cases, got one I made earlier, and I've just made person 2. So I'm going to highlight those. Yeah, it's just a copy because I was making one for practice. So let's look at those. I can click on the references to see what's within that case, and that would be the answers to the questions only. So A2 is LB's response, B2, that's all of number 17's response, and C2, all of Archie's response, etc. And what I'm going to do now is to auto-code that again, and this time I'm going to identify themes. And it's going across the data to identify the themes. But it's already self-selecting, so it's only looking at the answers. Okay, now I could code in sentences or paragraphs. Usually I do sentences, but you can always practice and see which works better. You can see it's a quick response. Okay, so now we're getting to our output. And if I click on this, which is a matrix code, we can see for each case, i.e. what we have here, LB's answers, number 17's answers. Yeah, so we're just using their answers. And along the top, we've got the auto code. So academic, what was talked about? Some things make sense. We might want to explore. How do they use the term academic? Here they're talking about career. Okay, so E talks a lot about career. But certain things like bit probably doesn't make much sense. It's all done way of cutting through the data. And if we want all the text, say with Sally, and interestingly there, Sally talks a lot about job, uses the term job, so that might be interesting. But if I click on it, it would take me straight to that data. So it's only the responses, not the questions. And some of them have already been subject to an annotation when they're in blue. But you can read down there. Yeah, academic job, teaching job, etc., etc. And if I wish to view then in context, I just click on blue remembers the annotation, but the brown highlight is the text, so we can read easily in context. And this is a hierarchy chart, and this has gone across the whole data set. And so we can see what was talked about. They're talking about projects, social project, intellectual project, social project purpose, Okay, so we can see the types of things that were talked about. So the intellectual project, the social project being important, as is research, as is career. Okay, you probably get less out of looking at something like thing, but early career researchers, academic, identity. So you can see the kinds of things that was discussed. And if we look at job there, job security, not sure what a their job, it's probably their job or the job, different jobs, academic job. And people, yeah, little bit. It's probably not going to be that interesting to explore that in too much detail. But everything is there, and that's a very, very powerful analysis because it enables us to get a really good overview of the kind of things that was talked about. And then it's easy to go into the nodes and we can look then, into the cases, and we can look and see what they said, what particular person said. Okay, so if we want to know what LB said, we just press on LB. And just remember, I've got a double, done this twice. So I am going to remain with my cases here. And again, do auto-coding. But this time I'm going to identify sentiments. I'll stick with paragraphs. And just to say, because we don't need to work with cases, once you've produced your data, oh, it's doing this. I'll come back to that. So what we have now is for each participant, and here perhaps you can see why it is important that we have separated the text, the interviewer's words from the interviewee's words, because we've got an analysis of whether what they said was said in negative terms, positive way, whether it was mixed or whether what they said was really fairly neutral. So if we'd included the interviewer in that, the interviewer might have been very, very positive and we might have skewed the results. So here we are. We've got a matrix diagram again. And that's useful. No, I'm just going to move these windows over. It's not letting me, but we can see here. So it's taken the interviewee's responses and segmented it of whether they're talking in very negative ways or very positive ways. And we should, of course, check and see if that's the case. So 32 very positive statements here by F, who is Sally. Okay, but I did try to keep on key things, and that might be significant. Well, whether that is very positive or not, I think that's debatable. But by and large, it seems really correct. So that was a really nice time in my career. So talking very positively. I was really enjoying the teaching. But I also had many hours where I could enjoy myself and I was doing things that I now do, spend a lot of time in the gym. I was quite interested actually in that kind of thing. So yes, it is positive. Whether it's ultra positive is debatable, I think. But certainly like really good, supportive supervisors. Yeah, so we can see that people perhaps were important in going through PhD. Supervisors very encouraging, giving work as well, RA work alongside. And they're doing a lot of teaching support. So by and large, yeah, pretty positive. But you can explore and see that here. And we can also look at sentiments. Oh, if I was clicked on moderately positive there, but let's click on very positive again. So overall, across the 6 interviews, we see that there were 113 extracts that have been auto-coded as being very positive. And this goes across the cases. Okay, so this can be quite a useful thing to do. And before I do anything now, because I can read and scroll down, but I've just right-clicked and I'm going to export sentiment. And we can export it in different ways. So in this way, it go to a reference or a summary. But I like entire content view, and that would be saved then as a HTML page. And let's see what we get. Because I think this would be very helpful to someone in the fairly early stages of their data analysis, having immersed themselves in the data, but now wanting to really home in and start to think, well, what is my data saying? What is coming out of the data? Okay, so we get this. So we've been looking at Sally, but we can look at any of them there. Okay, why not look at Marlowe? He's at the top. So let's view details. That takes us to text. And what we have there are all the references for Marlowe. That are very positive. Okay, so I can click on Sally. And again, once the annotations are in place, they remain. So you can see they're in blue, and you've got the list of annotations there at the end. So that would apply across the data set if we'd annotated all the interviews. But we're just annotating part of Sally's for demonstration purposes. So there we've looked at the very positive text. And I'd need to go back in, just looking for the project here. Yeah. And perhaps now we take very negative and look at the extremes and then look at the moderately positive and the moderately negative results. So I'm clicking this time on the 92 very negative aspects. And we might get a good sense of what is good about the progression of academic career and what is perhaps more challenging or negative for these 6 participants. So again, I'm just going to right click and export that sentiment. So we have to export sentiment by sentiment, and again take the whole entire content and add the paragraph numbers that I think's helpful. Let's open that. It exists because I made one earlier. But yeah, we'd be making this for the first time. So it seems to have got a little bit stuck up. There it is. So there. Let's have a look. And we can see they've put them in order. So Sally, 27 very negative statements. And we can look across them there. But we must be careful when reading. And that's why you might want to work within NVivo, because if you look at this particular reference here, it's annotated. It says here, but it really meant that if you didn't sign a new contract, your career would be dead. There is like no progression. Now, because the interview is about academic career, it could be assumed that Sally here was talking about academic career, but that wasn't the case. You'd need to go back into the interview and see she's talking about her time in further education sector as a further education lecturer, not as a university lecturer. And going back a long time and describing there one of the reasons of her move, or why she moved from further education, and how she then went on to move into higher education as a career. And again, we need to always look in context. So she's saying there, I'd stay away from reflexivity or anything, or critical reflection. And I suppose coming from a maths background, that was a science background, it wasn't in my mindset. But again, we mustn't assume that she's talking about the present and about her current career. And in fact, if you go back into the interview, you'll see she's talking then about her experience of moving from a maths background, maths teacher background in further education, and taking a Masters of Arts in Education, and starting to be exposed to different ways of thinking and different paradigms. And here again, and so I left academia, and then I found, oh, I really hated it. Oh, I hated it so much. Now, that's an interesting one, but if we don't go back into the interview, we might think she's saying she really hated academia and so left it because she really hated it. But if you go back into the interview, you are seeing she found that she really hated, she did leave academia for a while, took on a new role in a very different working environment, a working job. And it was that new working environment that she really, really hated. And that was a significant turning point for her in deciding then to go back into academia, because she's already an RA, but without a PhD. So we're going back a long time there, but going back, returning to academia, but this time with the intention to make a career of academia rather than exploring possibilities. Okay, so we can get a good overview both individually by looking person by person, but also by looking across the sentiments and looking across the, let me go back here, the auto-coded theme results. Yeah, so there's hierarchy charts, for instance. Now, it doesn't do the work for you, but what it has done is to group the data, keep grouping the data in different ways, going across that data set absolutely accurately in picking out the terms or near terms and grouping them together so that you can then choose which group is important for you as the analyst. Yeah, so you hold control, you're the analyst there. Now, the other thing we might want to do is to explore the data in the early stages. Now, having had a look here, I was quite interested at early career. What are they saying about early careers, for instance, and career? So let's put a text search in. Early career. And you'll see this on the basic search page within the Getting Started with NVivo course. We can move up and down, so we can have some words that are similar to early career. And I've got to be careful here because I don't want to go across all the data. And I'm going to stick here with these cases because, again, I don't want to be pulling up the interviewer's talk. And sometimes you'll want to look at the response in relation to the interviewer's talk. It's just decided to save, I think, so I'm going to have to wait there. Now, so sometimes you might be really interested to see, well, in order to understand the response, you have to understand the question, especially when it is fairly conversational in style. But then for that kind of analysis that we move on to, as we move on to thematic analysis and we move on to looking at potential for narrative and discourse analysis, we go back to the files and work directly from the transcripts that we have stored under files. You can see now why quite often I've got one that I prepared earlier. Well, we're waiting for NVivo to catch up. And if you don't want to work with the cases, another thing you can do, make another folder, interview transcripts, responses only. You just need to then right-click on the case responses and export, and then re-import them, but this time importing them as a file, and you can work in that way. That's okay. There is something going on with my NVivo, so I need that sorting out. I was trying to click on F2. So we have to be patient again. So selected project item not responding. And hopefully you've got a more powerful laptop than I have. And then you won't get this problem. Basically what we're going to do is just select those items, and then we'll be able to run the query, and it's going to give us a quick sift through all the responses to the interview questions in relation to early career. And so how I would use this facility, the text search facility, is, let's see if it let me do it this time. Yeah, it's let me do it this time. So I'd use it as a way to start to address research questions. So if I had a research question that is really around giving support to early career researchers, which was one of the questions that we had coming into this project, then I might do text searches on keywords such as that. Okay, so I'm going to now run that query. And we have those references there. And if I click down, we have a word tree. So what we have here are all the instances across all 6 interviews where the interviewee has said the words early career, and we put them in context. So we don't know who's said what, but it gives you like an overview picture. Capacity, they want to support early career. Early career researchers. And you might want to just understand a bit more. What are they talking about? What's going on here? Career and advice for like early career. Okay, if I click on that, just on that, I'll get to that link. So terms of starting your publishing career and advice for like early career researchers, you mean? And then the questioner says yes. So that was a clarification, asking a clarification to the questioner, to the interviewer. So let's have a look to see in context. So this is from C, there's Archie. And so we can understand how that term was used. Okay, so I probably only use the text search for key terms that are really related to my research aims, potential implications for practice, and research questions. The other one we deal with in the basic search page, again, we'd want to use on selected items. And this time, just so you get the hang, we don't have to go to the cases there. Let's go to files. Oh, haven't got anything in files. And they're not there. Okay, so I'm nipping back into cases. Let's take the cases again. This is one I did earlier. And again, Press move up and run the query. So we've gone across the whole of those responses, and we can see what it thinks are similar words, and that's including some very small words, which we could get rid of if we want to. We can put onto a stop list. So the basic search page in the Getting Started within NVivo course will explain how to do that. Or we could up this to 5, for instance, and run again. But for now, it doesn't really matter. So I'll put that back. And the main thing I wanted to produce was this tree. And quite interesting here, think, like, no, and that's why you might want to have a stop list. So if they're saying like too much, or think as a kind of pause or as a position to move on the text. But it's about the career. People are important. People are mentioned quite a lot: work, organisation, writing, career. And if I click on the word, we get to see them in context. And that can be another way of picking up on some general terms that have been used that you might then want to move into your early coding. And it may already be in your auto-coded version, but you may then want to develop that coding. In fact, definitely advise that you do so. So this video, just to recap, is recommended as a kind of interrogation that you do of the data to get an overview of your data set once you have already read and immersed yourself in your data. So it was important that I knew that data well enough for Sally, that I could actually interpret and understand where some of those texts were coming from, so that I didn't give a quick but incorrect account. Okay, so auto-coding can be considered quite quick and dirty, and it's certainly quick, but it is accurate. But you still, as the researcher, you're the main tool, and you need to interpret your data. Okay, so this video worked alongside the Getting Started basic search page and the Getting Started auto-coding page. And this is the end of the video. This is a short amendment to the video number 4 that's looking at gaining an overview. I realised that when I clicked on codes and said there are no codes there after having auto-coding, something seemed not to be correct there. And I did what many people do, and that's not to notice the little triangle here. So if I'd clicked on that, we'd see, yeah, no nodes there, but the nodes have been recorded within auto-coded themes. And here they are. So I'd use this in different ways. One way is to look at the term and see the different ways the terms have been used. So we have academic career, academic environment, academic field work, etc. And I've got those mostly open up. let's have a look at that one, education. So all the different ways education has been used within the interviews. Perhaps if I close that up, the main thing we might want to do there is to look at the terms. So intellectual project was quite a large category when we looked at the hierarchy chart. So let's just click on that and I can get to the output. Okay, so we can see here it starts with number 2, so that means number 1L. B didn't actually say the term. That's quite interesting. So it's all come from B, who's used that term. Now, if I want to look at any of these codes later, or work on them, I can actually code on the coding. So okay, I can annotate and I can code. But I can also export. So sometimes it's useful to export the nodes and I'd add in the annotations, paragraph numbers, memo links if we've made them. And this will then take us outside a Word document. But sometimes you might want to do that, or you might want to import it again as a new file to work on. So I just wanted to say that, given being able to find the nodes is important in an autocode. So that's the end then of the amendment to video 4.